My father's house next to the cemetery. Hello, when I was a teenager I moved into my father's home for the first time in California. I had some paranormal experiences in this house, that I often now joke about with friends, as I believe it 100% was my own fault. I've never shared my story with strangers or people who might have insight, so here goes. My stepmother would always say her deceased father was around and would mess with things whenever my father and her got into an argument, like misplacing his things during the night so he would be late for work the day after, etc. I never really believed this, as I wouldn't put it past her to hide his things herself. But my stepmother and I would often talk about the paranormal and ghosts. We didn't come from a religious family or anything, so it was always a very open discussion. Our house was right next to a cemetery on the other side of our fence. I was 16 and loved listening to scary stories on YouTube whilst painting, doing homework, etc. My stepmother and I had talked about Ouija boards, and since I was an, I guess, edgy teenager, I bought one. I spoke to my friends about it and they were all very intrigued with the idea of trying it. The first time we tried playing with it was Halloween night at the cemetery next to my house. The security was amped up this night, so my 3 friends and I found a large tombstone to hide behind and play, so we wouldn't be seen from the road. Absolutely nothing happened this night, which gave me this kind ego about it, where I took it even less serious. The second time I tried it was also my last. Once again this was a group effort with my 2 friends, both with the same name, which can be kind of confusing, so I will just call them C and R. We did a more official seance, and did a quick Google how to search beforehand. We lit candles, and planned to have me and R holding the planchette with blindfolds on, so C could read out potential responses. We asked a few questions with no response, but suddenly the planchette moved around. I had assumed that R and C were trying to fool me, so I wasn't scared or believing it completely. We asked for the entity's name, and I can't for the life of me remember it, but it sounded like an old Hebrew name. We got bored eventually after a few more boring responses, said goodbye, and that was that. After this time of playing with the board, things started to happen in our home. It started out so small I don't even remember much of the stuff in the beginning or a chronological timeline of events. I started waking up in the middle of the night and would feel this strong presence in the corner of my room by the door. I oddly never felt frightened, as the energy felt, I don't know, female. I would just roll over and fall back asleep after staring into the dark for a bit. I would also feel strange in the guest bathroom, and would avoid going in there at all costs. I thought at the time it was the lighting, that was strange. It was very bright and reminded me of a Sephora or makeup store. It would just make me feel extremely aware and anxious. The event that started amping up the activity was when I fell sick for 2 weeks. I almost never get sick, but was incredibly unwell and ended up going to the doctor, who gave me antibiotics I turned out to be allergic to, so I got more ill and had a bad rash all over my chest and stomach. During the time I was sick I stayed in the guest bedroom, as my parents were redoing their bathroom, and they also did not like the guest bathroom, so they used mine. I hated being in the guest room when I was sick. I was in the most confusing fever dream at all times, and felt like I was being watched and that the energy was being sucked out of me. I felt like a huge, dark weight was on me when lying down. I would feel better if I left the room and slept on the couch or snuck into my room. I heard voices speaking to me in the dead of night, that despite being sick I could brush off, as I was self-aware enough to know I had a burning fever and probably was hallucinating. When I finally got better and got my room back, I slept like a baby the first night. Until the energy followed me in there. I would wake up every night and the energy in the corner of my room would suddenly feel threatening instead. I would hear new noises in my room, that had never been there before. I know exactly what the AC sounded like, how often it turned on, the noise the door would make when it would turn on, or my dogs would lay up against it on the other side. I started hearing noises from behind me, which made no sense as it was just a wall. It sounded like scratching. I had complained about it so much, we ended up getting our house checked for rodents. Around this time is when I would get touched when I would walk down the hallway past the guest bathroom. It was always so subtle, that I wouldn't realize until I had walked into the kitchen. I also started listening to music 24/7 at home, so I wouldn't react if the spirit or spirits would speak to me. I felt like acknowledging it would make it worse, so up until this point I had tried to ignore all of this and brush it off. One night my parents went out for dinner and would get me something to go on their way back, so I could stay at home and chill. I was standing in the laundry room, which is right by our open concept living room and kitchen. I was scooping dog food for my 2 German shepherds who were hovering over their bowls next to me. Suddenly I heard a lady say, "Hey T." T is the nickname my family uses for me, and since it was a woman's voice I turned towards the door and go, "Yeah," thinking it was my stepmother. My gaze automatically locked on the hallway that precedes the kitchen straight across from me, when I realized I was home alone. I looked down at my dogs next to me and they also had their eyes glued to the same spot as me, and reacted at the same speed. I walked a few steps out and my dogs followed timidly, which was strange. Suddenly, like I was in a cheesy horror film, my dog's ball rolled from behind the kitchen counter and stopped when it hit the wall ahead of us. Keep in mind my doggos were sat right next to me, so they couldn't have dropped the ball and it rolled. I was so in shock but remembered my family had the Life 360 app, where we can see each other's location. So I check, and my parents were going well over the speed limit on the freeway 20 minutes away. I didn't even know what to do, so I just fed my dogs with tears in my eyes and went to hide by my desk in my room. The scariest event that happened, although terrifying and sat with me for a long time, I still take with a grain of salt as I had smoked some weed a few hours before. I hadn't tried it many times before that, but had gotten home and took a nice warm shower and listened to some music. I normally got super paranoid when high, but I was coming down from it and more relaxed than usual. I was so relaxed I even walked around my room naked after I had gotten out the shower, which is something I never do, as I am extremely reserved and find clothing comforting. But I was walking around my room and wanted to move my bowl of sewing pins from my dresser over to my desk. I dropped the bowl, and had to bend down and dig into my nude carpet to find all of them again. As I bent down, all naked and vulnerable, I suddenly felt like the walls were closing in on me and heard whispers from the walls, I guess. It was coming from all around, so I was hurrying to pick up the pins. My vision also started to blur and I was feeling a tightness in my chest. Suddenly I had a deep growl from over my shoulder, that made my entire body tense up, all the hairs raised and instant goosebumps along with tears in my eyes. I jumped into my bed, to feel a sense of comfort and hide my body from this invisible thing. I laid in my bed and hid like a little kid even though I was 16 years old. I have never been so frightened in my life. I laid there for so long and had to pee so bad but dreading having to get up again. I FaceTimed my best friend to comfort me and explain what had happened, so I felt safer getting up, quickly throwing on some clothes and went to the bathroom. This experience scared me so bad I also didn't touch weed for over 2 years, but when I hit uni I became a functional pothead during exams, and have never had any experiences like this when high. After this event, nothing major and scary happened again. I would still hear a woman's voice from time to time, and our kitchen sink would turn on so I could hear it from my room. But that was the last time I was scared of anything paranormal. After my family moved to another state, nothing else has happened to me since. My stepmother threw my Ouija board out during the move so it never got to touch base in the new house. I feel that from playing with the Ouija board I opened up some sort of contact that otherwise wouldn't have been known. I have tried to psychoanalyze the situation and the living situation I was in. My family was extremely emotionally toxic, and we had our issues, that's for sure. So I have considered if the mental toll of my family dynamic manifested itself in some anxieties for this unseen force. However, in the new house nothing has ever happened, and our family dynamic became worse there, so I don't believe that's the cause. I'd like to hear what you think. Was I just a paranoid and anxious teen with some family troubles and interest in the paranormal that then made me believe things were happening around me? Or did I open some communication with R and C through the board that one night? Or a whole third option? Thank you for listening, don't forget to subscribe and have a good day.